The shriek of the brakes split the night like a blade, tearing through the quiet of the empty station. The last train to Seoul stood beneath the dying light of flickering lamps, the platform stained with a sickly orange hue. Shadows of passengers shuffled inside, tired and unaware they were stepping into a slaughterhouse on wheels. Rain hissed down from a bruised sky, painting the concrete black. Among the crowd was Ji-hoon, a lean factory worker with veins like steel cables from years of hard labor. He carried nothing but a worn backpack and a creased photograph of his little sister, Hyeon, waiting at the Seoul station. He didn't know the city would never see sunlight again. The train doors closed with a metallic groan, like a coffin being sealed. The first scream came from car 7, sharp and wet, followed by the thud of something heavy hitting the floor. A woman in a nurse's uniform staggered down the aisle, her neck ripped open, skin flapping like torn fabric. Her eyes were fogged, blood spilling from the corners of her mouth. Passengers screamed and scattered, but she moved fast, far too fast for someone dying. She leapt onto a young man, her blackened teeth sinking deep into his cheek. The crunch echoed through the car, followed by the wet rip of flesh. A hot spray of blood painted the windows like a burst hose. Within seconds, 2 bodies jerked and spasmed on the floor. Then they rose again, their heads twitching in unnatural rhythm. The infection spread like fire through gasoline, burning through the train car with terrifying speed. Ji-hoon sat in car 3, unaware of the carnage ahead. The sounds came first, a blend of screams, bone cracking, and wet chewing, before the infected burst through the connecting door. Their jaws hung open like cracked hinges, skin peeled away in strips, their eyes milky and feral, fingers clawed raw from tearing into flesh. A businessman tried to shove past Ji-hoon, desperate to flee, but the infected swarmed him and dragged him down. Their mouths plunged into his stomach like starving wolves, guts spilling onto the aisle in steaming ropes of crimson. Ji-hoon swung the fire extinguisher with all his strength. The blow split a skull in half, gray matter splattering across the walls. The businessman twitched on the floor, veins darkening as his face began to contort. Ji-hoon realized with sick clarity, the infection was instant. They didn't just bite, they devoured. Blood painted the walls in streaks, pooling beneath the seats in thick, dark puddles. Car 5 was a nightmare painted in red. Families were torn apart, their screams drowned beneath a chorus of growls. A woman clutched her children as infected swarmed her from both ends. She begged for mercy, but mercy didn't exist here. Teeth plunged into her throat and a river of blood poured down her chest. Ji-hoon burst through the door, swinging the extinguisher like a hammer. An infected skull exploded against the window, cracks spidering through the glass. He swung again, the metal slick with blood, until nothing but pulp remained. Behind him, the infected ripped through passengers, tearing off arms, chewing through spines, gnawing on faces until they were unrecognizable. The train swayed through the night, no longer a means of travel. It was a steel coffin on rails, carrying the dead and soon-to-be dead. Near car 8, Ji-hoon stumbled into a group of soldiers who had boarded at the last stop. Their uniforms were soaked in blood, some of it not their own. One soldier raised his rifle, ready to shoot, but froze when a small girl appeared at the end of the aisle. She was crying for her mother. Her lips were dark, her veins black as ink. She lunged forward, and the gunfire exploded through the car. Blood burst from the child's head as her skull shattered against the wall. A soldier gagged, bile rising, but he kept firing into the horde that followed behind him. Bullets punched through skulls and limbs, but the infected didn't fall. They only slowed. A soldier screamed as his arm was ripped off at the shoulder, the wound spraying red arcs across the cabin. His throat was next. Ji-hoon grabbed a fallen bayonet, his knuckles white. "We can't stay here," he hissed, and the surviving soldiers pushed forward with him, carving their way toward the front of the train. Car 9 was a furnace of horror, a place where the last traces of humanity bled out. Dozens of passengers were trapped, their screams ricocheting off the metal walls as the infected ripped through them like paper. A man was dragged by his ankles, fingernails snapping as he clawed at the floor. His legs were stripped of flesh before he even stopped screaming. Ji-hoon swung the bayonet like a scythe, severing necks, splitting faces open. The blade got stuck in a skull. He yanked it free, spraying blood across his shirt. A soldier threw a grenade into the horde. The blast painted the car with red mist, severed limbs tumbling through the air like shredded meat. And still, they came, pouring in like water, crawling over seats, over bodies, their jaws broken, their fingernails cracked and bloody. Ji-hoon roared, drenched in blood that wasn't his own. In car 2, Ji-hoon found a teenage girl hiding beneath the seats. Her hands were trembling around a shard of broken glass. Her parents were gone, torn apart like everyone else. "They're everywhere," she whispered, her voice a thread of sound. Her cheeks were streaked with blood and tears. Ji-hoon crouched, looking her in the eyes. "We keep moving," he said softly. "Forward, no matter what." The pounding on the connecting door grew louder. The glass began to crack. He dragged a seat and jammed it against the door, but it wouldn't hold for long. The train screeched through a tunnel. Darkness swallowed everything. In the dark, the infected fell silent, their heads twitching like animals sniffing prey. Ji-hoon motioned for the girl to hold her breath. One infected slammed against the glass. Another followed. The barrier burst apart. They ran, breath ragged, as the infected spilled in behind them like a black tide. Ji-hoon hurled the girl through the next door and slammed it shut. One of the soldiers ahead hurled a makeshift Molotov cocktail. Fire erupted through the car, turning it into a burning corridor of screams. The infected flailed as their flesh bubbled and split, eyes melting like wax. The air reeked of burning meat. One soldier coughed blood. He'd been bitten. His voice was calm when he said, "Don't let me turn." Ji-hoon nodded once, and the bayonet flashed. The man dropped without a sound as the flames roared behind him. Only Ji-hoon and the girl made it to the front. Seoul was still miles away. The conductor's voice crackled through the speakers, hoarse and broken, begging anyone alive to hold on. The front cabin was clear, for now. The girl stared up at Ji-hoon, her lips trembling. "Are we going to make it?" she asked. Before he could answer, the door behind them burst open. A massive wave of infected surged in, faces mangled, teeth dripping with blood like wild dogs. Ji-hoon shoved the girl into the conductor's cabin. "Stay here!" he barked. "Don't open this door!" He stood alone in the aisle, chest heaving, the bayonet trembling in his grip. Then they came. He slashed and stabbed, blood spraying across the windshield in thick, hot ribbons. The floor turned slick beneath his boots. A jaw clamped down on his shoulder, tearing through flesh like paper. He screamed and drove the blade into its eye. Another bit into his leg. Another clawed at his back. Teeth sank into him from every direction. But Ji-hoon kept fighting, ripping out throats with his bare hands. A man becoming beast, rage drowning pain. His final roar filled the train. The girl curled up in the conductor's cabin, hands over her ears, as the car behind her became a slaughterhouse. Ji-hoon's last scream was lost beneath the growling chorus of the undead. The train barreled through the night, sparks flying as it approached the station. When it arrived in Seoul, it didn't stop. It plowed into the platform, the doors sliding open to reveal a city already swarming with infected. The girl stepped out, clutching the bloody glass shard, her face streaked with soot and tears. She wasn't a victim anymore. She was a survivor in a world that had ended. Behind her, Ji-hoon's body twitched and rose from the blood-slick floor, eyes clouded and mouth dripping red. And the feeding began again.